entire world is watching what's just happened in Iceland. Goldman Sachs and others went in the last 5 years, got the country deep in debt in derivatives, knowing they were going to implode the derivatives. It isn't just the wealth they get with all this fiat financial Madoff Ponzi scheme garbage. It's that once it implodes, the banks come in and loan more money to the government, literally indenturing the people as slaves. And the whole world is watching because Greece, the people are revolting. 10 years ago, Goldman Sachs went in, set up a system, got them deep in debt. The banks got rich off of it. Now they're saying the roads, the infrastructure, the famous places, the islands must be given to the private bankers. Top Democratic and Republican lawmakers are saying the same thing is now going to happen here. We're a year and a half into the banker takeover of October 2008, the financial terrorism where they said, give us unlimited trillions or we'll have a depression. We're going to use it to unfreeze the mortgage market. Then they clamped down on the mortgage market even more, hoarded the money, and they won't say where the money went. So here's the headline. Iceland votes no to debt deal for collapsed bank. Now, a year ago, they declared anti-terror powers on Iceland, froze people's bank accounts, wouldn't let them get their own money out, saying your money is ours for the Dutch, British, and U.S. banks. And Birgitta Jonsdottier and others ran for office. She is the current chairman of the Civic Movement Parliamentary Group on the Icelandic Parliament, leading the charge against these people. They've got other initiatives to make themselves a free press zone against the shutdown of the Internet. She's with us for the next hour, joins us via video link from Iceland. And Ms. Jonsdottier, thanks for coming on with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here. We're about to go to break, but this is huge what happened, because if the rest of the world takes what you've done as an example, we could end up actually routing this group of criminals.
Absolutely. I mean, I hope that what we did by forcing the government to allow the nation to vote on this will be an inspiration for other people. And it was actually more than 60%, almost 63% of the nation showed up to the polls, and it was a 93% no.
93% said no. 93% said no to what? Tell folks specifically what happened.
They basically were saying no of privatization or socialization of private debt, or in other words, the bailout of the bankers.
The socialization of private debt, or the bankers come in, sell a bunch of derivatives, and then claim the people owe it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, we had some of the Icelandic bankers decided to branch out because of EU regulation, branch out to Europe, open internet bank accounts there. And then when these accounts collapsed, the British and Dutch government claimed that the Icelandic nation should fork out the state guarantee for this. And you have to bear in mind there are like 317,000 people living in Iceland, and the accounts in Holland and Britain were around 320,000. So each Icelander should have shouldered around 20,000 euros per person.
And to add insult to injury, they use anti-terror laws to try to take people's money.
Yeah, what they did just shortly after the collapse, Mr. Darling, the UK finance minister, decided to, and Mr. Brown, a minister of the UK, decided to put terrorist acts on Iceland, which classified us among other nations such as North Korea, Zimbabwe, and organizations such as Al-Qaeda. And what this did during the middle of a financial meltdown in Iceland was that it dried up all loan lines to Iceland, and we were facing food shortages and medicine shortages.
Well, let's break down the history of what happened, what it's led to, where you go from here. This is so exciting. 90+% of the country saying no to the jackals. The Icelanders know who their enemy is. They know who the criminals are. Will we follow their example? Going back to Birgitta, continuing, recap what the banks did, the fraud, the year of protest, the terrorism act used, the threats by the banks to shut your country down, food shortages, and the people standing strong.
Well, I guess it all began, I'm sure many of your listeners have seen the film about Enron. And Enron was about the same size as the population in Iceland. So when we watched Enron on the national TV in Iceland, very many people felt that were like the regular staff of Enron, not knowing what the tops were up to. And when everything collapsed in August 2008, most people in Iceland had no idea what was going on. So it came as a complete shock to the nation. So what had happened 5 years prior, the banks were privatized with little help from the Independence Party in Iceland and Progressive Party. They basically donated the banks at really very good prices, wholesale prices to their friends and allies. And because we are, like 80% of our regulations around banks are based on the EU regulations, they managed to start to branch out to other countries. And they were basically, like very many of the bankers, high on world domination, fantasies, and they wanted to take over the bank sector in the UK and in Europe. And I guess they didn't make a lot of friends, and in general, they were quite naive, and they had no understanding about how the system worked in general. So it was like school children running amok with a lot of, virtual money, which they sort of sucked out of regular bank, or, people that save their money in banks and so forth. And they actually conned people into moving their savings into these unsafe accounts, and it especially targeted the elderly people and immigrants and so forth. But that was during the last year of this insanity. So people in general thought that we were going through this incredible big boom, which I guess was largely just an illusion. So people took loans. They offered 100% loans on mortgages and so forth, and foreign currency loans on cars. And right now, very many people are facing foreclosures. They are facing foreclosures because of if they, went bankrupt on a car loan. Because in Iceland, we don't have that wonderful legislation you have, where you can actually return the keys and then, of your house, and then you are sort of free. They will follow you with your debt for the rest of your life, and you will never get rid of it.
And to be clear, the banks have done this in Argentina, in Greece, in Spain, in the U.S. They make this fiat derivatives bubble. It's just made-up crud paper. They certify it as AAA, gold-rated. They sell it to governments. They sell it to citizens. They get all the wealth. And then it came out that Goldman Sachs and others, by design, mainstream news, McClatchy newspapers and others, they then blow it out at the time of their choosing and use the implosion to then come in and buy everything up. And Iceland is the only modern country to be put through this scam to say no. Continue.
Yeah, well, that was a long way to get to that no, I tell you. A lot of fight. But in general, what happened, as I'm sure that most of the listeners to the show understand how the IMF works. So what happened after the terrorist act was placed on Iceland? The UK and the Netherlands government said, with a little help from our Nordic friends, said, okay, if you want to get any loans or the loan lines open, you're going to have to go into an IMF program. And in order for you to go into the IMF program, you're going to have to solve this IceSafe dispute, which is this dispute about the banks that were in the UK and Holland.
And so let me just stop you for a moment. Going back a year ago, the food's not being shipped in. Everything's falling apart. They're saying we've got to sell all the government assets, take citizens' tax money, all for these banks. And the BBC reported Iceland, Britain's unlikely new enemy. This is from a year ago. And it says, until a few days ago, Britain was admired and respected by the average Icelander. But the UK's move to seize the assets of this isolated European state have provoked a backlash of feeling of escalating resentment. They, quote, treated us like terrorists, grabbing the government accounts, grabbing people's bank accounts, saying we're going to take your money under terror laws and give it to the bankers. Continue.